The animals that are truly native to our continent, besides the horses, are the buffalo. And the horses and buffalo live side by side together. And the buffalo were the mainstay of food for the traditional people in our country, for the indigenous people. There was an onslaught against the buffalo and against the wild horses. And millions of buffalo were killed, and nearly 2 million wild horses were eradicated from our country. We furnish the landscape with cattle. And cattle are not indigenous to our country. They sit in one area and eat all the grass, and then it's too damaged to be able to come back again. When you watch a wild horse population or a buffalo population, they're never in an area for longer than maybe 20 minutes, and they're off that grazing area. And if you watch them graze and you see how much grass they've eaten, they leave more than 50% of the plant. So it's very important to understand what happens when you take the native animals off their native habitat area and transplant them with other non-native animals, because it just doesn't work out in many cases. For now, on public lands, we have had a deterioration of those lands for the last 100 years, to the point that they have never been in an upward trend, but they're always in a downward trend as far as grazing goes.
Regardless of the situation, the reality and circumstance we arrived at, up to this point in time of dominant history and its ill-gotten revisionism, could lead the sheeple into believing that what we are doing to the earth is the only remaining choice surviving. Capitalism, disguised in experiential democracy and its patriarchies, is showing signs of a lost investment. We must not examine the cost in body bags, body counts, nor stock exchanging itself into the illusion that monetary value is the epiphany of so-called civilized minds. This mindset has given itself the privilege to establish immortality by destroying the very sustenance that derives life, as human beings know it. It is human to only think of the human evolutionary process as elite to all life, the very political process we are demanding from each nation to nation across this earth to whom we belong, especially the alternative class, is exactly that. It is in the word alternative. Alternative to what? Why change the native way when it is a tried and true continuation simply because it works? No matter what anthropological theories abound within the confines of convincing you that the scientific rationale translates only rhetorical religiosities which compromise nothing but spirit. If we really get a fix, a reality fix, on who we are and where we think sanctimonious technology is taking humankind, and if we as indigenous peoples with indigenous thinking processes, which includes you, are going to be in this 7th generation, then let's face it, regardless of the situation, we are not alone, we are not inherently intelligent, we are only a strand in the web of life. You have heard it before, this is not a cliche for another boring drill to wake up. This is an urgent necessity, a dire need that you, as an individual, take the responsibility of maintaining the earth life.
Our goal now is to take 8,000 horses that are threatened with slaughter because of a rule change in Congress that was slipped into legislation. The government decided that they're spending too much money on the horses. Any horse over the age of 10, the government could now sell to slaughter. And any horse that was not adopted in 3 tries would go to slaughter. There's a good possibility that all of these horses over in the next 5 years will become that age and will be eliminated. So it's important for us to take these 8,000 horses that are threatened and will go to slaughter. And we started with a project about 1.5 years ago to traditionally bring them back to the tribes again and do it in a very traditional, spiritual way. The nice thing about bringing the horses back, this is part of a prophecy that many of the tribes believe, that they've been without horses for 100 years. And when we brought the first group of horses back here in 2001 and gave them to the tribe, we had a ceremony that was given by Chief Orville Looking Horse. And during that ceremony, they sang a horse song that was never sung before in over 100 years. And so it was really very meaningful. And it was so beautiful to see because those horses went into a buffalo pasture. And on top, all the buffalo congregated. And they were in somewhat of a semicircle up on top watching the ceremony from below. And as the horses were released, they stood very quiet and still, never took a mouthful of grass at all up on top of the hill while the ceremony was going, and the singing and the drums and so forth. And when the horses were released out to where they were, the buffalo just simply turned and began to walk away. It was the most beautiful experience to see what happens, because the buffalo and the wild horses roamed this land for a long time together. The Lakota people believe, as I do, that the horses are sacred, and they're called Shumta-Wakan, which means mysterious dog. Literal translation now is sacred dog, because the term for God is mysterious one. So it just means that this is a mysterious dog, meaning that this is a sacred dog, because Wakan means sacred. Peace and good things are to happen again when the horses and the buffalo and all of these animals come back to the indigenous people here. The indigenous people believe that the horses never disappeared from our continent, and they said as long as we have lightning and thunder, that the horses are there because they are in the clouds with the lightning and the thunder. And if we had no lightning and thunder, then there would be no horses.